they've begun reading the names of those lost on September 11th. You know, I think about my kids often, my two youngest kids who weren't alive on September 11th, and try to explain to them exactly what happened on that day and the pain and the tragedy that so many families felt on that day, but also echoing what Paul said. And it's so hard to explain to somebody that it wasn't there, that wasn't alive at the time. Paul talked about the sharpest brightness. And it's hard to explain how vivid that time was, not only for those in New York City who remember that day where the skies over Manhattan were the bluest and the most vivid they had ever remembered in their life. And it was the same across this country. Just a sharpness, a vividness, and a patriotism. I was in Pensacola, flags draped from anything that would hold an American flag, hearing the stories later of what happened on Flight 93, that crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Todd Beamer and a group of Americans in the back of the plane, hearing what had happened, picking up a telephone, talking to an operator, asking her to say the Lord's Prayer with him, and asking her to tell his family that he loved her, and then turning to those other Americans in the back of the plane, making their plan to save thousands of others from possibility of death, and then saying, let's roll, and beginning the first counterattack against these heinous crimes against humanity that were launched by Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. Willie and Mika, I know that this day meant so much to you all as well, and you saw firsthand the pain, but also the extraordinary American spirit that came out of this tragedy.
Yeah, Joe, we had, I grew up in a suburban town in New Jersey, not far from New York City. We had 12 people from our town die on 9/11 in the towers. And one of the enduring images of this commuter town, and I can still see the images in my mind because I wasn't living in New York, but my father did a piece about it for CBS, is of the cars that these men and women parked at the train station to hop on New Jersey Transit and go through their daily ritual of catching an early train down to Wall Street. And the cars stayed there for several days, and that was the image that they weren't coming home. And this morning I'm texting with some of them. One of them was my next door neighbor. Her daughter was my friend since I was in kindergarten and lost her mother in the tower. We have family friends, and how many of those families are there in Washington, in the New York area, people who are on those planes from all over the country, feeling that again today. And Mika, I think maybe now, 19 years later, you think about it less often, but when you do think about it, it's no less painful, it's no less horrific, and your heart breaks no less for all of those families who never got to see their loved ones again.
When I think about it, Willie, two piercing images come to my mind. And seeing people jumping from the towers and seeing families looking for their family members for weeks after. I remember after several weeks of covering it, I finally went home and I rushed to my daughter's school. My daughters were 3 and 5 at the time, and I remember breaking down and holding them so close because I couldn't believe that I could go home to them. There's so many families who didn't go home to their children after 9/11. And the second is interviewing these firefighters in the school way down very close to the towers before the second tower fell. And one firefighter told me on the air to tell his wife that he loved her, which he did, but the look on his face as he turned away and walked back in with many other firefighters, they knew chances were they weren't going home, but they did it. Those are my two piercing memories that cut deep.
And this image we just showed of firefighters in front of the skeletal remains of the towers, obviously one of the iconic photos of that tragic time. But Willie, I think if I could find a picture that encapsulated what I think of an American hero, it would be that face of the firefighter walking up the stairs, staring straight into the camera's lens. While everybody else was rushing downstairs, he was calmly walking up those stairs. He knew to his death, most likely, to try to save anybody that he could.
Yeah, and there are stories and accounts of firefighters taking care with every last person, someone who was injured, who needed to be helped out, moving slower than they would have liked to, some of them not making it out, but they did it because that's their job. And then they stayed on that pile, as Paul knows all too well, they stayed on that pile for months and months and months. And we want to
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.